Thank you very much, Las Ciancorla, and thank you, Minister, for taking this topical issue. I want to raise the deeply uncompetitive environment that exists to encourage productive investment in Irish small and medium-sized enterprises, and the deeply unfair and inequitable taxation which is in place for the self-employed. And just, I suppose, at the outset, Minister, to ask you why it is, and I genuinely think most Irish people aren't aware of this and would be shocked if they knew it, why it is that an employee who earns €15,000 pays €285 in tax through PAYE, USC and PRSI, whereas an employer who has taken the risk to establish a company and all of the attendant stress and headache that goes with that will pay a total of €2,235 in taxation. That's 684% more for the self-employed person on the exact same wage as the employee. Why is it that an employee earning €50,000 pays €14,585 tax, while an employer on the same rate, €50,000, pays €16,235 in taxation? That's 11% more. And an employee on €100,000 pays €40,384, whereas an employer who earns the same amount, €100,000, pays €42,034, 4% more. These are really startling figures, and they send out, in my opinion, Minister, a very, very negative signal, a very negative signal to the people that we need to continue creating jobs, who we desperately need to grow their businesses, and who we need to ensure a sustainable recovery for this country. It really strikes me as quite perverse that we single out the self-employed, the people who on a daily basis politicians from all sides of this House pay lip service to. We talk about entrepreneurs, we talk about the need for entrepreneurship, the need for people to take that risk, to go the extra mile, to set up a business or to develop a business, yet we are hitting them with punitive levels of tax, where in some instances a self-employed person pays 684% more in tax than somebody who is their employee on the same wage level. I think it's all very well to talk about small business, and obviously both government parties did to a huge extent in their respective manifestos before the last election. But neither party, and indeed no party in this House currently, proposes to introduce any sort of tax equity or tax fairness for small business people, to help them along the road, to encourage them, to say to them, we don't think that you are crooks and gangsters, we don't think that you fiddle the system, we believe that you are the sort of people that we need in our society to create jobs and create opportunities and develop our economy long into the future. And I suppose what I find perplexing is how this government can pretend or claim that it supports entrepreneurism when our tax policy explicitly discriminates against entrepreneurs. In actual fact, what we are doing at the moment is exporting entrepreneurs, and we are exporting the people that we need to invest in Irish small business, and that I think is really tragic. It's true of our income tax policy, our jobs policy, our jobs tax policy with PRSI, our investment policy with punitive levels of capital gains tax, which are totally out of kilter with the rest of the modern developed world.
Thank you.
And we're taxing families who want to help their children start businesses through capital acquisitions tax. It's really unfortunate, Minister, and I look forward to hearing your response.
Margaret, Minister.
Thank you very much indeed. I would like to thank the Deputy for raising this matter this afternoon. I recognise the key role that Irish small and medium-sized enterprises play in creating employment in our economy. SMEs account for nearly two-thirds of employment in the enterprise economy, and it is for that reason that I have introduced and extended a wide range of tax measures to encourage productive investment in SMEs and to promote the growth of small enterprises. Government has sought to diversify sources of investment for the SME sector and recognises that the tax system can play an important role in this. That is why I have expanded the Employment and Investment Incentive, which provides income tax relief on investments of up to 150,000 in SMEs in successive budgets. In Budget 213, the incentive was extended until 2020. In Budget 214, the incentive was removed from the higher earners restriction. And in Budget 215, the incentive was further expanded to cover a greater array of businesses and permit companies to raise more capital. The level of investment made under this scheme is rising, and it is expected that this trend will continue. In Budget 214, I introduced the capital gains tax entrepreneurial relief, which provides CGT relief for serial entrepreneurs who use the gains from one investment to invest in a new firm. In the same budget, to improve access to non-bank funding for SMEs, I exempted transfers of shares from companies on the enterprise securities market of the Irish Stock Exchange from stamp duty. The latter provision is subject to EU state aid approval. To further encourage entrepreneurship and ensure that new entrepreneurs can invest in their own startups, the Seed Capital Scheme will be rebranded as Startup Refunds for Entrepreneurs, or SURE. As the Deputy may be aware, under this scheme an employee who leaves PAYE employment may claim a refund of income tax already paid in respect of their investment in the new incorporated business. The information leaflets are being simplified, and the scheme will be the subject of a marketing campaign to be undertaken by the local enterprise offices. Corporation tax relief is available for new start-up companies in the first 3 years of trading. This allows new firms to reinvest their profits into expanding their business. The relief was extended in Finance Act 2014 for 1 year, and my department is currently reviewing this scheme with a view to further improving its operation. The measures I have outlined to the Deputy were designed to improve the tax environment for investment in small enterprises. I have introduced measures to assist SMEs in other ways in recent budgets. These measures include introducing the 9% rate of VAT for tourism-related services and abolishing employer PRSI on share-based remuneration as part of the Jobs Initiative in 2011, increasing the cash receipts basis threshold for VAT to 2 million in Budget 214, increasing the de minimis amount that can be retained by a closed company without giving rise to a surcharge in Budget 213, enhancing and extending the foreign earnings deduction to new qualifying countries in Budget 214 and 215, introducing the Start Your Own Business initiative to assist entrepreneurs who have previously been long-term unemployed, introducing the Home Renovation Incentive in Budget 213 to create economic activity which aids small construction companies, expanding the annual excise relief production ceiling for microbreweries, and removing the base year restrictions on R&D tax credit in Budget 215, which removed the significant administrative burden from all companies who use this incentive. I would also point out that Ireland has low rates of employer social insurance contribution when compared to our EU partners. As a result, the cost of hiring a new employee is one of the lowest in the European Union. Tax reliefs and reductions constitute a loss foregone to the Exchequer at a time when there is still a requirement to correct the public finances. I would suggest that we should continue to direct what are limited resources toward assisting entrepreneurs and small firms through focused tax reliefs. To conclude, I would make the general point that companies invest where they anticipate that demand will increase in the future. As SMEs primarily supply the domestic market, they are particularly reliant on domestic demand. The income tax and USC reductions introduced as part of Budget 215 will increase citizens' disposable income and correspondingly increase consumer spending in the domestic economy, encouraging SMEs to invest and expand. With a growing economy, increasing employment, expanding supports for entrepreneurs and a low corporate tax regime, I believe Ireland is a good place in which to set up business.
Deputy Lucinda Creighton, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Minister. And I'm aware of all of the various schemes, and many of them are extremely complex. I suppose a lot of the feedback that I'm getting from small businesses is that they're inaccessible or they don't qualify, and there are a huge number of hurdles and obstacles for a lot of the schemes that you've mentioned. I'm glad that you mentioned the 9% rate of VAT, because I think that has been a really successful policy choice which this government made, and it's one that I have supported. And you'll recall, Minister, in advance of last year's budget, I wrote to you and lobbied you in order to retain the 9% 50% level. It has been hugely successful, and I think it demonstrates how very focused, very targeted tax measures do work. And I suppose my concern is that the very focused, targeted taxation measures have been focused very much at the construction sector and the building sector over the last 3 to 4 years, rather than at the SME sector. And I think that there are very simple changes that could be made, which I don't believe would cost the Exchequer greatly, but would simply make the environment for self-employed people much fairer. And no doubt, Minister, I know that these figures never find their way into government press releases. We always hear about, the FDI company that has created 20 jobs or 50 jobs, and there's almost a rush of ministers to be there to cut the ribbon. But the figures that we don't hear about, but I know you, I'm certain, are well aware of, are the figures from the CSO last summer, in August 2014, which showed that the number of self-employed people who employ others in their company has actually decreased. That is a very, very, very worrying trend at a time when there's so much emphasis on start-up companies, on the need for new companies, and that is obviously very important. But the fact that the small and medium-sized enterprise sector are actually not employing the same number of people as they were in 2011, that number has actually dropped, is, I think, a huge cause for concern. And especially as it goes against the trend of greater levels of employment in the state, to see self-employed people actually being reduced to one-man operations because they can't afford to maintain or retain staff is a massive cause for concern. And I hope, Minister, that we're not papering over those cracks and that you will actually deal with that and confront that very worrying trend.
Call the Minister to reply.
I think everybody knows that the SME sector was under pressure as a result of the disastrous policies pursued by the Fianna Fáil Green government, where the economy crashed out. And if GDP goes down by 20%, is it any surprise that the number of SMEs in the economy will go down as well, and that there are closures? But some of the CSO figures to which you refer are historic, and the SME sector is now building up again. And I have given a lot of encouragement through the tax system to the SME sector. And it's not just in construction, it's in the tourist industry, and it's in farming and in construction, but also laterally in retail and in the smaller service industries like software industries and IT companies and financial services. So we've concentrated right across the sectors. And the difference between the growing economy now and the economy we had in the Celtic Tiger is the Celtic Tiger economy was dependent on one sector, and the taxes are generated, building and development and speculation in building. If you look at the latest set of statistics, all sectors are now growing, and all sectors are contributing to the 5% growth or so that was in GDP in 2014, and we'll continue that policy. Now, there's one area with which I agree with you, and it's something that we inherited. The introduction of the PAYE allowance in 1980, while well justified through the 80s, created a differential between PAYE people and self-employed people, and that differential needs to be looked at when resources come to hand. And I'd agree with your analysis in that space. But it's not something that was created by this government, it's not something that was magnified by this government, but it's something that this government is aware of. And I'll take your views into account when we're preparing the next budget.